All right, boys. We're back with another evening episode from the Four Wheel Studio here. I just got off work, and this is about the only time I got to record, so good evening. By the time you see this, it may very well be good morning, and if so, I hope you have a good day at your work. Yeah, this is very quickly. I can see this very soon turning into its own episode. I had this idea to do some news stories, to just kind of talk about what's going on and just kind of give my reactions. We'll see if this is going to continue to be the opening segment or if this is going to be its own thing, because it's been a week. It's been a week, boys. So let's get to it. Secretary Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, is in the middle of some controversy. There is so in the Caribbean, the United States military is sinking a bunch of drug boats because they are on their way to pump their poison into our streets. Sorry, I got distracted by a cat. I don't have cats anymore. Gotta appreciate them when they're nearby. Anyways, so the U.S. military under Pete Hegseth's orders, and really under President Trump's orders, are sinking a bunch of drug boats. The libs don't like it. So they took this opportunity of a reported double tap to go after and try to remove Hegseth once again. Supposedly, according to the Washington Post, during one of these strikes on these drug boats, there were a couple of survivors in the water, and Hegseth supposedly issued the order to deliver another strike to kill the survivors. And the New York Times, of all people, came out and said, no, that's not true. We have it on the authority of multiple sources, anonymous sources, but sources of ours, that said that he was not in the room and did not issue that order. However, we also don't like the strike, so they're trying to maintain a little bit of integrity while still not siding with this administration, but ultimately, who cares, man? It's a bunch of narco-terrorists. I certainly don't care. If you are a veteran of the war on terror, you probably don't care either. Continuing to fire on squirters or, people who survived the initial attack is nothing new to the military over the last 20, 25 years, and really over our entire military history. So it's just a little silly. And it's really not about what's happening. It's about they're trying to remove someone they actually perceive as a threat. That's what's actually going on here, because they hate this guy. They think they just constantly try to make him look bad. Ask the Joes what they think of Pete Hegseth. I guarantee you're going to get a lot more positive view of our current Secretary of War. Anyways, moving on. We now have three Afghan nationals that have been arrested. One for carrying out the attack against the National Guardsman that, God rest her soul, murdered one of the National Guardsmen. And as of right now, the other one is still in critical condition, so God willing, he'll recover. He pled not guilty the other day from his hospital bed. But there was a second one. This one did not carry out his attack, to my knowledge, thankfully, but he was posting on his TikTok how he was going to set off bombs in the Fort Worth area, and the FBI swooped him up real quick. And then you have now a third. This is an Afghan national that was arrested in Virginia by ICE or the FBI. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm going to include some links on these stories down below. But he had been providing material support to ISIS-K, the ones that operate in Afghanistan. And he's got, I guess, some relatives or somebody that are also there that he had been supporting. So, yeah, and we let him right in our front door. So, well, until now. So he's under attack, and who knows? By the time of this posting, there may be a fourth. And by this time next week, there may be 10 more. Who the frick knows? But it won't matter for much longer, because the next story is the Trump administration is now beginning a major crackdown. So back in June, he had already basically banned immigration from 12 nations in particular and had restrictions on another 9. Well, he's now banned all 19 for the foreseeable future. Hopefully for good, for the foreseeable indefinite period of time, whatever. Not least of those is Somalia. And up in Minnesota, there is now a whole bunch of controversy going on where a lot of them have been busted for fraud, for frauding our medical system, issuing a bunch of fake claims. And a lot of that money ended up getting sent back to Somalia to fund Al-Shabaab. More of our enemies are getting American taxpayer money. And, you know, just generally not assimilating, they're not here to assimilate or become a part of American culture. Most of them, and this is, I don't have the exact stat, Trump says 88%, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but the majority of them are on some kind of welfare, so they, by and large, are pulling from the taxpayers' resources rather than contributing. As a matter of fact, I want to say they are one of the very top, as far when you are looking at countries of origin, they're one of the very top who pull the most resources and do not give a net positive. So they're not putting as much in as they are taking out. They're actually taking way more out. So Trump is now reviewing everybody's green card. There's going to be a lot more. Not only has immigration been paused for multiple nations, that could possibly be expanded, and hopefully it will be. And a lot of the people who are here even legally may soon be going home because they are a waste of space, and it can't happen fast enough if you ask me. Senator Bernie Moreno, this is all more or less immigration focused today, I guess. Senator Bernie Moreno, who is a Republican from Ohio, introduced the Exclusive Citizenship Act of 2025, which aims in 1 year, if it passes, to end dual citizenship in the United States. He himself is a Colombian immigrant who at age 18 became a naturalized citizen of this country and happily renounced his Colombian citizenship. And he wants every dual or multiple citizen. That's what the article said. I guess that's a thing. I thought there was only 2. I don't know that it's super well regulated, but it may not be a thing for much longer. And I think there's a lot of support behind this. This would be fantastic to see. I hope it gets pushed. I don't know how good our chances are, but this absolutely needs to be. So basically, if you are a dual citizen, you would have 1 year to declare your fealty to the United States or loyalty to the other nation, and you would be treated as a foreign national from here forward. And if you don't do either of those things, you will automatically be assumed to be a foreign national. And I'm sure if you are a unsavory type, you will be subject to deportation, as you should be. And then the last big story, I could have picked probably a half dozen more, but there was a special election in Tennessee's 7th House District, and it was Republican Matt Van Epps going up against Afton Bain? I don't know. So he is a veteran of the 160th SOAR, the Special Operations Aviation Regiment, and she is a AOC type state legislator, and they threw down in the 7th district because the sitting representative wanted to leave and resign to go pursue private employment, whatever. So Epps is the Trump endorsed candidate, obviously, and he won. Now, something of note is this district went Trump plus 22. Epps only won by 9%, but this is a special election. It's not even a midterm, so it's an off year. He did still manage to win by 9 points. Democrats are celebrating because this shows a big swing to the left for the district, a significant pendulum swing back in that direction. I don't know how to read this just yet, because people are making the point that Republicans are really bad about getting out to vote for minor elections, and that is one thing I hope you, the viewer, will correct in time as we begin to spread the word. Get out and vote. Even in those local elections, they're extremely important. But he did win. We'll see. Need to continue to study and learn from this. We definitely can't get arrogant, but hey, we'll take the ones where we can get them. And he was actually sworn in today. So he enables us to keep the House, which is way too close to the margin, but the Republicans maintain a 220 majority. You need 218 to be the majority in the House, so they are 220. Anyway, so the main topic of this video today is, I think, so last time we talked about Christians need to be voting, and whether my case or somewhere else someone has convinced you that that is in fact the case and you should be voting, and you are a Christian, or even if you're just a conservative, I'm going to tell you that it is my belief up front here that if you're a Christian, at least for the foreseeable future, you need to vote Republican. I don't think there's any other option right now. And if you don't know me, don't assume I am happy when I say that. Don't assume I am enthusiastic when I say that. I have extensive frustrations with Republicans, especially congressional Republicans. They are, for the most part, a bunch of big talk and not enough action. However, I'm at the point in my life where I would rather die than vote Democrat at this point. The Democratic Party has essentially made me an enemy of their party for probably the remainder of my life. They would have to have some major reconstruction of the party and what they stand for to even have me consider any of their candidates, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. Probably not even in my lifetime. But if you're a Christian, you should be voting for the GOP, even if you have to grit your teeth. But why do I say that? Because I'm not exactly the most pleased with that. Well, essentially in the United States, people describe us as a two-party system. And that's not technically correct. There are lots of different parties. Even some of the more well-known ones, there's more than just the Republican and the Democrats for your options. By the way, today we're going to be starting to lay the groundwork for what I want to do in the next few videos moving forward. Is I want to start going issue by issue and explaining each major party's stance and which of the two I think is obviously the more in line with Christian values. Sometimes it may kind of look like neither, but the majority of the time, if not all the time at this point, it's probably going to be the Republicans. So I am a biased source, but I'm going to let you know that up front so you know what you're getting into. So I'm just going to make the best case I can. But where I really want to see some change, because I want to see the Republican Party hollowed out as well. There are a lot of old dogs that need to go. There are a lot of neocons that need to go anywhere else and do anything else but remain in those seats of power. The Make America Great Again, or really America First movement, needs to be the Republican Party platform moving forward. So how I kind of think about this, for the Republicans and the Democrats, I don't really think of them as parties as much as I do coalitions, because they each have different factions within them. And I just named one or two on the right. So some of the smaller parties that you may hear pop up from time to time are ones like the Libertarian Party gets mentioned a lot. Lately, the Communist Party USA gets mentioned a little bit. Don't get confused. I actually learned something. So the Democratic Socialists of America are probably more talked about than the Communist Party USA. However, I didn't realize until just before this video, but they are not actually a party. They are a political organization, and I assume would work hand in hand with the CPUSA a lot of the time. But the Communist Party is the actual party, and that is going to have that body of ideas that they push, while the DSA is more just kind of a political organization that works with whoever they need to. And they are becoming increasingly active in the Democratic Party. So you even have people like, I know AOC, at least at one point, was a card-carrying member. I don't know if she still is. A lot of them work with Zoran Mamdani, who was just elected in New York City. So it's about to be an interesting few years in New York City. But, by the way, this is all my opinion. At the end of the day, I am just human, man. So if you disagree, I don't hate you, man. We can still be friends. But I don't see how Christians make more of an impact or get a government that is more in line with Christian morality. It's never going to be perfect. But without supporting the major conservative party, which for now is the Republican Party and probably will be for a good long while. But back to the umbrella ideas. On the right, you have, like I said, you got the neocons, but you have MAGA, and you have some others also sprinkled in there. So it's not just a color. There's many different stripes that fall underneath each umbrella. So compare that to a parliamentary system like in the UK or Germany or anywhere else in Europe and some other countries around the world, where you do have these different parties and they actually win more because the systems tend to be more set up to be to not always be winner takes all, but a little bit more proportional to how the votes are cast. But it still forces those parties to make at least temporary alliances, blocks of essentially, they form a coalition. There you go, that's the word I'm looking for. And so they kind of make this two-party system to be anyways in order to get at least some of what they want passed. And so I think America is really not as different from that as people think there are. We just kind of front load that with the Republicans and the Democrats, whereas others vote for their individual party first and then have their groups that they tend to pair off with to get a majority, to get who they want in like the prime minister's seat and so on. Let me check my notes. Okay, so what are we looking at when we're deciding whether or not to go for a candidate? It really comes down to two major things. Who is most in line with your values and with your goals and particular policies that you want to see come into office, even if it's not the final state of that goal, and we'll talk about an example of that here in a second. But who's closest to you in what you value, and who's most likely to win? And Republicans drive me freaking nuts because we don't put enough emphasis on that, or not Republicans, but conservatives, because we just love to die on our principles, while the left will vote blue no matter who. They will literally vote for any pile of crap with a D next to their name. And that's why they win. And their voter turnout tends to be higher. They do cheat too. I wish I could say the right's clear, clean, and free of cheating. I'm sure they're not. I'm sure we do plenty of dirty tricks. Gerrymandering comes to mind, but both sides definitely do that. But I'm not going to get into the both sidesism in this video. So those two things, what do they value? What do they push? What's the agenda? And how likely are they to win? You can get as ugly as you want in those primaries. That's where you can really dig in and fight for your specific candidate or even an outsider. But once the primaries are done, we on the right need to do a lot better job of rallying around. It drives me nuts the amount of never Trumpers there are on the right, because Trump has accomplished more for the conservative agenda than any frickin' George Bush or Romney or anyone like that has, as long as I've been alive, which, I'm still relatively young. But abortion is the example I'm going to use here. So there's a big debate over, do you go and stick to the absolutist, where it's either all or nothing, we ban it all, or we don't do anything? Or do you take what's called the incrementalist method? And the incrementalist is what I think is the right method, with not just abortion, but with many issues, because we have made no progress in 50 years. Until Trump gets into office and gets 3 Supreme Court justices, and not long after that, Roe v. Wade is overturned. And now, yes, we don't have a national ban yet, but individual states, I want to say it's more than 10 now, have essentially banned abortion. Sadly, it's still a part of our society, but it's already less. And God willing, it will continue to advance. You got to, as much as you can, slow the bleeding. And if you just always commit to the most extreme option, you are never going to win. Most likely. And so it's ridiculous that so many people are just ready to die on that hill. Yeah, let me just sit here and, have my feel-good position. Meanwhile, 1 million babies a year continue to die. Whereas now, maybe only 800,000 will die. Or maybe even 500,000 one day will die. It's still horrible, but it's less than 1 million. And one day, God willing, it will be 0. So, but we can't do that if we don't win. So I did not always think this way. I actually used to be a third-party guy, but I've kind of come around. I've thought long and hard about it, and I thought, you know what? I used to think of it kind of in a circular reason. I used to think, well, of course third parties don't win, because nobody votes for them, because they don't think they can win. But since nobody's voting for them, taking a chance on them, they're not winning. Because nobody votes third party, because nobody votes for them, because third parties don't win, because nobody votes for them, and on and on and on. Until one day I just woke up and was like, you know what? I want to win, man. Even if that doesn't mean I get absolutely everything. So here, consider this. Even if all we're doing is maintaining the status quo, it's better than moving backwards. Because odds are at least something is going to change. Even if the only thing Trump has done so far in his term was to close the border down, that's still better than we were. Even if he had done no other policies up until this point in his second term. If closing the border and sealing the border was the only thing he had done, and cracking down on immigration, then it still would have been a net gain over what we were experiencing. And I just take that and I repeat that across multiple issues. So, in the upcoming few videos, what I want to start to get into is I want to start going issue by issue. And I think you're going to see, and obviously, not every Republican candidate is going to perfectly embody each of these. But that's, like I said, that's why you got to get involved in the primaries. I did not like Nikki Haley. I thought she was a despicable, corrupt neocon. And that's why I pushed so hard for either Trump and I had to come around on Trump. I wasn't even a Trump guy at the beginning of this last election cycle, but I've come around since then. I can't remember if it was DeSantis or somebody. I honestly can't remember. It's feels like we've lived years in the last couple of months, so that's already been all flushed from my head. Hash it out in the primaries. When the primaries are over, get behind the closest candidate. Don't swing to the other side, because these parties are becoming more extreme. The Democrats have not moderated their stance. Well, you know what? This video's gone on long enough. So I'm not going to get too in the weeds just yet of what each party stands for. But we will get into those details. So for now, I hope I've given you some things to think about and consider. If you don't, let me know where you disagree, man. I hope that you guys, that I can start seeing some of your comments. I would love to interact with you guys and get some feedback. And either way, I really appreciate you watching, and stay tuned.